Hi guys, welcome to this week's Meal on a Budget. We are going to be making shepherd's pie or cottage pie, depending on if you agree that shepherd's pie is the whole new plan, as we're using ground beef. I ended up spending $11.90 on the ingredients for this recipe, but it will be enough for 2 dishes of the shepherd's pie. I can freeze both, have one for tonight, and freeze the other, whichever I prefer. So I bought a package of ground beef for $5.13. A small onion for 59 cents, a can of peas for $1.99, and a can of cream of mushroom soup for $1.69. Potatoes are running about $2.29 a pound at our local grocery store, but I was able to get a deal, 5-pound bag of potatoes for $2.50. So we're going to have leftover potatoes that I will end up using in vegetarian stew that I've thought of making this week. So $2.50 for the potatoes works out to $11.90 for the entire recipe. Join us in a minute and we will get things started. So we are just finishing up dicing up our potatoes. I washed and dried them all. These are a smaller roasting potato, so I'm actually leaving the skins on. I like the fiber. I think if I was going to serve this as a part of my Christmas meal or something like that, I would probably spend the time peeling, but it's just me and the family, so we're just going to get everything into this little pot. I put a little bit of salt and pepper to add a little bit of flavor to the potatoes. Always make sure you have a lid because potatoes, once they start to boil, will boil over. So once I get all of these in, I will put that lid on. I also have a frying pan here ready. I'm going to get the onions diced up, and then we will start on the meat filling as well. So join us in a minute, and we will get all of that going. So we're just finishing up dicing our onions for our filling. I like to use gloves when I'm slicing onions or touching meat. It just keeps my hands a little bit cleaner and less onion aromatics. So I've got that done. I've got my pan heating up a little bit. So I always like to heat my pan before I put my oil in, just to make sure that it doesn't burn the oil. I only put just a drop of oil because I am using beef and it is a little bit higher fat. I don't want to put any excess fat in this, but I would like to have a little bit of oil to saute up my onions. So I have all of those diced up. They'll just go in the pan here. We'll fry those up. Get those sauteed a little bit, put a little bit of salt and pepper, so there's a little bit of seasoning right at the base. Once those have turned slightly transparent, then we will add the beef into the pot and we will get things stirred up. We'll be back in just a minute. So I have my onions ready here. I'm going to just put a little bit of Italian seasoning because I like it. But again, you don't have to add anything that you don't already have in your house. Then I'm going to take the ground beef. This is a lean ground beef, so there won't be a lot of extra fat, but there's still going to be some. I always use my hands when I first put it in. If it was slightly frozen, use a wonderful little chopper like this. It just allows you to break the meat up a little bit better and incorporates those onions into this meat. I'm going to use my fingers to get that off there. So we're going to brown this meat up. Once the meat is completely brown, we are going to toss in our can of mushroom soup and the can of peas, and we will get things blended all together. The potatoes should be ready about that time, and we'll put it all together and make it into a shepherd's pie. So we have our meat ready, and I've taken the top off my can. One thing I did want to mention is most people recognize the North American style of can opener that actually takes part of the tin itself off. It's awfully sharp. The lids are very unsafe. So if you can, try to get a European style can opener. It actually sits on the top of the can and it takes the entire top off without taking any of the tin on the side. And it's safe. I've seen commercials where you can actually run it across the lid and it doesn't pop. This way you can put the lid into the garbage without cutting yourself. But that's just one of my little tips and tricks. Go ahead and pour in your can of peas as well as your can of cream of mushroom soup. I like using cream of mushroom. It's something that my grandmother and mother and all of those wonderful people in my life have done. It just gives it that creamy texture that you're looking for without having to use flour and thickening agents and stuff like that. The one thing I like to use is, if you have it in your cupboard, is the beef soup base. The granules, the bouillon cubes, however you want to put it. I just like the flavor. It's also why I use a little less salt when I'm preparing food, because it is actually quite salty. But I put that in just as a slight flavor enhancer. We're going to stir that up. The potatoes are just about ready. Come back in a minute and we will assemble this wonderful pie. So I have drained the potatoes out of the water. I am mashing them. I try to mash them in the pan. Unfortunately, I chose a smaller pan today. If you had butter or milk in your fridge and you wanted to do a creamed potato, that's always a good option. Add a little bit of salt and pepper to your potatoes to get some seasoning. I do have some leftover cheese that we had from our chicken fajita nachos the other day. So I'm actually going to put some of that in here. The heat from the potato will melt it, and it just gives you that little bit of added taste to your potatoes. And it works really well. Again, none of that is required. Do a cream potato, a regular mashed potato. If you had some garlic in your fridge, or you like roasted garlic, you can always do that as well. Just gives it a little bit of variety, adds a little bit of something to your potato instead of just a plain standard potato. So we've got that. If you like it more chunky, keep it chunky. If you like it a little bit more liquid, you can do it that way, or a little bit more smooth, you can do it that way. Otherwise, once you have it all mashed up, and get to fight with the potato masher, because we all know how wonderful that challenge is, we can I'll pull all that off later, just to show you what it looks like when you get it done. Got our mashed potato, nice and smooth, and a little bit chunky if that's what you prefer. Put the potato on top of each of your shepherd's pie dishes here. If you didn't put cheese in the potato, you could always put a little bit on top. My mom used to like to sprinkle some paprika on the top of hers. I think she went through a phase where paprika was her favorite seasoning. It tended to be on everything. So you just flatten out your potatoes, and we are almost done. So we've got 2 full dishes of shepherd's pie. Again, I could freeze both of them and then just label them. When you're ready to cook them, take them out in the morning, put them in the oven, 45 minutes if they're still frozen, 20 to get them nice and hot if they're not. If you're doing them as of right now, just have them in a preheated 350-degree oven just until you get a nice crispy top on your shepherd's pie. So that is 2 shepherd's pie containers for $11.90. It would easily feed a family of 4 if you had a green salad or something to go on the side, or if they're light eaters, or 2 very, very healthy portions for each container. $11.90. Join us next week. We're going to do a vegetarian stew.